I arrived at my classroom and the principal said, 11 parents claim you've been showing their children inappropriate content. I stood in the doorway of Principal Kenneth Drucker's office, my lesson plans for the day still tucked under my arm, completely frozen by what he had just said. My name is Rachel Winters, and I had been teaching 7th grade English at Riverside Middle School for 6 years. I had arrived early this Monday morning expecting to set up for our poetry unit. Instead, Kenneth sat behind his desk with the district's legal counsel, a woman named Pamela Voss, and both of them wore expressions that made my stomach drop. I heard what you said, but I don't understand. What inappropriate content? Kenneth slid a folder across his desk toward me. These are formal complaints filed with the district office over the past week. 11 parents have reported that you showed sexually explicit material to your students, used profane language in class, and displayed videos containing violence and adult themes. The allegations are extremely detailed and span the last month of instruction. I picked up the folder with shaking hands and opened it. The first complaint described an incident from 3 weeks ago where I allegedly showed a film clip containing graphic violence during our unit on conflict in literature. The parent claimed their daughter came home traumatized after watching scenes of warfare and death. The problem was we had been reading poetry that week, not studying conflict, and I had shown no film clips at all. I looked up at Kenneth and Pamela. This is wrong. 3 weeks ago we were analyzing sonnets. I never showed any war footage. The entire class was about Shakespeare and Elizabeth Barrett Browning. I have my lesson plans, my gradebook entries, everything documented. Pamela made a note on her legal pad. We will need to review all of that documentation, but Miss Winters, there are 10 other complaints describing different incidents. Each one provides specific dates, times, and descriptions of what was allegedly shown or said in your classroom. I flipped through more complaint forms. One described me showing an R-rated movie with sexual content last Monday during 4th period. Another claimed I had used multiple profanities while discussing a novel on Wednesday. A third alleged I had displayed graphic images of violence and death while teaching about World War I, except we had not covered any war topics this semester. The details were specific and damning. Parents described their children coming home upset, asking questions about adult content, repeating curse words I had supposedly used. Several complaints mentioned other students who could supposedly corroborate the incidents. My hands started shaking as I read through accusations that painted me as someone completely unrecognizable. This is all fabricated. None of these things happened. I teach middle school English. Every single lesson is documented and follows district curriculum. Many of my classes are observed by student teachers. Other faculty members are in and out of my room constantly. These accusations are impossible. Kenneth leaned forward with obvious discomfort. Rachel, I have known you for years. This is difficult for everyone, but given the number of complaints and the severity of the allegations, the district has no choice but to place you on immediate administrative leave while we conduct a full investigation. You will maintain your salary and benefits, but you cannot be on school property or have any contact with students or their families during this period. Pamela added her legal perspective. This is standard protocol in situations involving allegations of inappropriate conduct with minors. The investigation will be thorough and fair, but until it is complete, the district must prioritize student safety. You will need to surrender your classroom key, your school ID, and any materials you have at home related to your teaching. We will arrange for someone to pack up your personal items from your classroom and deliver them to you. I felt panic rising through my chest and into my throat. Administrative leave meant I would be locked out while these lies spread through the entire school community. Kenneth, these complaints are coordinated lies. Someone is doing this deliberately. I need access to my classroom computer, my files, my documentation. All of that will prove these accusations never happened. Kenneth's expression softened slightly but remained firm. All of that material will be preserved and reviewed as part of the investigation. We have already secured your classroom and computer to ensure no evidence is tampered with. The investigation team will review everything, including your lesson plans, gradebooks, computer files, and classroom surveillance footage. Surveillance footage. That was it. Riverside had installed cameras in all classrooms 2 years ago, after a vandalism incident. Every moment of my teaching was recorded and stored on district servers for 60 days. If these alleged incidents had happened, they would be on camera. And when the footage showed nothing inappropriate, these complaints would be exposed as lies. I looked directly at Pamela. You have cameras in my classroom. Review the footage. You will see that none of these allegations are real. Every single accusation will be disproven by your own surveillance system. Pamela made another note. We will definitely review all available footage as part of the investigation. However, I need to caution you that video evidence is just one component. Investigators will also interview students, review written materials, and speak with witnesses. The process typically takes 2 to 3 weeks, possibly longer given the complexity here. 3 weeks of sitting at home while my reputation was destroyed. 3 weeks of students, parents, and colleagues believing I had shown children inappropriate content. I stood up from my chair, my legs unsteady beneath me. I am cooperating fully, but I am also going to prove that someone has orchestrated this attack against me. These complaints are lies, and I am going to find out who is behind them and why. Kenneth nodded slowly. That is what the investigation is for. If you are innocent, Rachel, the truth will come out. but his tone carried doubt that cut through me. I walked out of the main office past the front desk where the school secretary looked away quickly. The news had clearly already begun spreading through the staff. I drove home in a daze and sat in my driveway for 15 minutes trying to process what had just happened. 11 parents, all filing complaints within a week, all describing incidents that never occurred. My husband David was already at work at his engineering firm, so I had the house to myself to think. I went inside and immediately pulled out my laptop. I kept meticulous digital records of everything I taught, detailed lesson plans for every day, gradebook entries with timestamps, copies of all handouts and assignments, notes from parent communications. I opened my files and started building a timeline of the past month that the complaints covered. For each date mentioned in the accusations, I documented what I had actually taught that day. September 8th, when a complaint claimed I showed violent war footage, I had actually led a discussion on poetic meter and rhyme schemes. September 11th, when a parent alleged I used profanity while discussing a novel, we had worked on grammar exercises and sentence structure. September 15th, when someone claimed I displayed graphic images, we had been analyzing metaphors in contemporary poetry. By early afternoon, I had a comprehensive document proving that every single allegation described events that had not happened. I had taught completely different content on those days. I had documentation, I had curriculum guides, I had copies of student work from those class periods. I emailed the entire package to Pamela Voss with a subject line reading, "Evidence proving all allegations are false." Then I sat back and tried to figure out who would do this and why. I thought through recent conflicts with parents. There had been a situation 2 months ago with a student named Connor Merrick who had plagiarized an entire essay. I had given him a 0 and required him to redo the assignment. His mother, Bethany, had been furious, claiming I was too harsh and demanding I change the grade. I had refused and the 0 had stood. Connor had failed the quarter as a result. Bethany had sent several angry emails and had gone to Kenneth to complain, but the administration had supported my decision. Had that conflict driven her to orchestrate this revenge? I thought about other recent issues. I had been vocal at faculty meetings about concerns with the new district curriculum director, who wanted to remove several classic novels from our reading lists because of complaints from conservative parent groups. I had argued that we should not be censoring literature based on political pressure. That stance had put me at odds with some parents who wanted more control over what their children were taught. There was also the situation with Emily Stanton, a student whose parents had demanded she be given extended time on all assignments because of anxiety, even though she had no formal accommodation plan. I had followed district policy requiring documented learning plans and had not given the extensions. Emily's parents had been angry and had threatened to go to the school board. Any of these conflicts could have created resentment, but enough to coordinate 11 false complaints? That seemed extreme and required planning. David came home around 6 and found me still at the kitchen table surrounded by printouts and documents. "Rachel, what is wrong? You look terrible. What happened?" I told him everything, about the complaints, the administrative leave, the accusations of showing inappropriate content to children. David's face went through shock, confusion, and then anger. "This is insane. You are the most careful professional teacher I know. You have documentation for everything you teach. Who would make up these accusations?" That was the question consuming me. Who benefits from destroying my teaching career? David sat down across from me and read through several of the complaint forms. These are very detailed. Specific dates, specific content, specific reactions from kids. Whoever wrote these put real effort into making them sound credible. He pointed at one complaint. "Look at this one. It describes you showing a film clip from an R-rated movie and includes the title of the film and specific scenes. That is not something someone just makes up spontaneously. This took research and planning." He was right. These complaints had been crafted to sound legitimate with enough detail to seem credible to investigators who did not know the truth. That level of fabrication required coordination. David leaned back in his chair and studied me. "You need a lawyer. The district may have legal counsel, but you need someone protecting your interests. This is going to get worse before it gets better, and you need professional representation." He was absolutely right. I spent the rest of the evening researching education law attorneys who specialized in defending teachers against false allegations. I found a firm called Hastings & Rourke that had successfully defended educators in similar situations. I called first thing the next morning and got an appointment with senior partner Diane Hastings for that afternoon. Diane was in her 50s, sharp and direct. She listened to my story without interrupting, reviewed the complaints and my documentation, and leaned back in her chair. "Miss Winters, I am going to be direct with you. 11 coordinated complaints is extremely unusual. In my 20 years representing teachers, I have never seen a false accusation campaign of this scale. That does not mean it is impossible, but it means we are dealing with something organized and deliberate." I leaned forward in my chair. "What do you mean organized?" Diane pulled out a legal pad. "These complaints are detailed, specific, and coordinated. They include dates, times, descriptions of content, and alleged student reactions. That level of fabrication requires planning. Someone did not wake up one morning and decide to file 11 false reports. This was orchestrated by one person or a small group, and they recruited others to participate." The implications settled over me. So someone planned this. Someone organized an attack designed to destroy my teaching career. Diane nodded. That is my assessment based on the patterns I see here. The question is who and why. Walk me through your recent work history. Any major conflicts, any decisions you made that could have created enemies. I went through everything I could think of. The plagiarism incident with Connor Merrick and his mother Bethany. The curriculum debates with conservative parent groups. The situation with Emily Stanton's parents demanding special treatment without documentation. Diane took notes and asked follow-up questions. Then she asked something I had not fully considered. What about other teachers? Any professional conflicts or competitions for positions that could have created resentment? I thought about it. There had been an opening for department chair last spring. I had applied and been selected over 2 other candidates. One of them was Jeffrey Larson, a teacher who had been at Riverside for 15 years and clearly felt the position should have been his based on seniority. He had been cold to me since the decision was announced and had made several comments in faculty meetings questioning my curriculum choices. But would he orchestrate something this elaborate over a department chair position? Diane made a note. Professional jealousy and perceived slights can drive people to extreme actions. We should consider all possibilities. She outlined her strategy. First, she would request all investigation materials from the district through a formal legal demand. Second, she would analyze the complaints for patterns suggesting coordination or fabrication. Third, she would prepare a defense package with my documentation and evidence. Fourth, she would demand access to the classroom surveillance footage immediately, rather than waiting for the district's timeline. If the footage proves these incidents never happened, that is your strongest defense. We need that evidence secured and reviewed now. Diane warned me this would be expensive and time-consuming. But if you are truly innocent and this is a coordinated attack, we can win. We need to prove who orchestrated it and why, and we need to do it before your reputation is destroyed beyond repair. I authorized her to proceed and wrote a retainer check that hurt, but my career was worth it. Over the next few days, I heard nothing from the district. David and I stayed home avoiding neighbors and friends because I did not want to explain what was happening until I had more information. Then on Thursday evening, my phone started buzzing with texts from other teachers. I opened them and felt my stomach drop. The story had leaked. Parents were posting about it on social media. A local news site had picked up the story. Teacher under investigation for showing inappropriate content to middle schoolers. The article did not use my name, but it would not take long for people to figure out who it was about. By Friday morning, my name was all over parent Facebook groups and neighborhood forums. People I had never met were calling me disgusting and demanding I be fired immediately. Diane called that afternoon. The media coverage is bad, but it gives us leverage. If this goes to legal proceedings, we can argue that the leak was part of the coordinated attack designed to prejudice public opinion and make it impossible for you to return to work even if cleared. She had received some investigation materials from the district. The complaints had all been filed through the district's online portal between Monday and Friday of the previous week, all within a 96-hour window. That is another red flag, Diane explained. Real complaints typically come in gradually, especially when multiple families are involved. Having 11 complaints filed within days suggests they were coordinated and submitted together as part of a plan. She had also noticed patterns in the language. 4 of the complaints used nearly identical phrasing to describe my alleged behavior, including the same unusual phrase about me showing content that normalized adult themes and behaviors. No one naturally phrases things identically, Diane said. This suggests the complaints were written by the same person or small group using a template, then filed under different parent names. That was progress, but we still needed to identify who was behind it. Diane suggested we hire a private investigator to look into recent conflicts and identify potential organizers. I agreed, and she connected me with an investigator named Christine Valdez, who specialized in education cases. Christine was former law enforcement, methodical and thorough. I gave her everything I knew about potential suspects and recent conflicts. She started digging into email records, social media connections, and communication patterns among parents and staff. Meanwhile, the district investigation was proceeding slowly. I was contacted for a formal interview, which I did with Diane present. The investigator, a district administrator named Gerald Kemp, asked about each specific allegation. I provided my documentation proving I had taught different content on those days. I explained that surveillance footage would confirm nothing inappropriate had occurred. Gerald took notes but seemed unmoved. Miss Winters, we appreciate your cooperation. We will review all of this information as part of our investigation. Diane interjected. Gerald, my client has provided clear documentation that the content described in these complaints was not taught on the dates specified. She has lesson plans, student work, and gradebook entries proving what was actually covered. Does not that suggest the accusations are fabricated? Gerald's expression remained professional. We are investigating all aspects of the complaints. Documentation is one piece, but we also need to interview students, review additional materials, and examine the surveillance footage. The process takes time. That response terrified me. Even with proof that the allegations were false, the district was treating them as potentially credible. After the interview, Diane said this was normal. Districts are risk-averse. With 11 complaints, they are worried about liability. They will likely recommend termination or forced resignation regardless of evidence unless we can prove definitively that this was a coordinated fraud. I refused to resign. Resigning would look like an admission of guilt. I needed to be cleared completely or fight until I proved who was behind this. Christine called me 5 days later with her first findings. I have been analyzing communication patterns among Riverside parents and staff. There is a cluster of 6 parents who have been in unusually frequent contact over the past month. Group emails, text chains, phone calls. This pattern stands out from normal parent communications. She gave me the names: Bethany Merrick, Connor's mother; Laura Stanton, Emily's mother; 3 other parents I recognized as members of a conservative parent advocacy group that had pushed for curriculum changes; and 1 parent I did not know well, a woman named Denise Hartwell, whose daughter was in my 4th period class. Christine continued. All 6 of these parents have had documented conflicts with you in the past year. Bethany over the plagiarism incident, Laura over accommodation requests, the 3 advocacy group members over curriculum choices. Denise actually filed a complaint last year claiming you were teaching material that contradicted her family's religious values. I remembered that complaint. Denise had objected to a short story we read that mentioned evolution. The administration had dismissed her complaint as unfounded. But here is what is really interesting, Christine said. All 6 of these parents are also in frequent contact with Jeffrey Larson, my colleague, the teacher who had lost the department chair position to me. What kind of contact? Christine had details. Jeffrey has been emailing with these parents regularly, meeting with them outside of school, and according to phone records, having lengthy calls. This started about 2 months ago, right after school board elections when 3 new conservative members were seated. I think Jeffrey is your organizer. The pieces started fitting together. Jeffrey had lost the department chair position and resented me. He had connections with conservative parents who already disliked my curriculum choices. He had the knowledge of how the district complaint system worked. Had he brought these parents together and convinced them to file false complaints? Christine had more. I also found something interesting in the metadata of the complaint forms. They were all filed from computers at the Riverside Public Library, not from home computers. That suggests the complainants filed them together in person, possibly with coaching from someone who knew how to make them sound credible. Diane requested the surveillance footage through an emergency motion, arguing that it was critical exculpatory evidence being deliberately withheld. The district pushed back, saying the investigation team needed time to review it first. Diane threatened to file suit immediately and go to the media with allegations that the district was suppressing evidence of my innocence. The judge scheduled an emergency hearing. At the hearing, Diane presented our evidence, my documentation proving I taught different content on the dates specified in complaints, the communication patterns showing coordination among 6 parents, the library computer records showing complaints were filed in person together, the identical language suggesting template use. The district's attorney argued that the investigation was ongoing and releasing footage prematurely could compromise it. The judge was not sympathetic. Counsel, if this footage proves the allegations are false, your client has an obligation to resolve this immediately. I am ordering the district to provide the surveillance footage to both parties within 48 hours. When the footage came through, it was devastating to the complaints. Every single date mentioned in allegations was covered. The footage showed me teaching exactly what my lesson plans documented. Poetry analysis, grammar exercises, vocabulary work, no inappropriate films, no graphic images, no profanity, nothing remotely matching what the complaints described. Diane filed an emergency motion to dismiss all disciplinary proceedings against me and to require the district to reinstate me immediately with full back pay. She also filed a separate civil suit against the 6 parents and Jeffrey Larson for defamation, conspiracy, fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The media coverage shifted dramatically once the surveillance footage was revealed. False claims rock local school read the headlines. Articles detailed how a group of parents coordinated by a disgruntled teacher had fabricated accusations against an innocent educator. The public backlash was immediate. The 6 parents were flooded with criticism on social media. Jeffrey was suspended immediately pending his own investigation. The district's attorney reached out to negotiate my return. They offered full reinstatement, back pay, and a written apology. Diane negotiated for more. We got a public statement clearing my name, an independent review of district complaint procedures to prevent future abuse, and a substantial settlement compensating me for reputational damage and emotional distress. The amount was significant, enough to make the nightmare feel slightly less devastating. The criminal investigation moved forward. The district attorney's office was interested in the case because it involved filing false reports about child safety. They charged all 6 parents with filing false police reports and conspiracy. Jeffrey faced additional charges including witness tampering and abuse of authority. The evidence was overwhelming. Christine had found text messages between Jeffrey and the parents where he provided specific instructions on what to include in complaints, coached them on how to make accusations sound credible, and even drafted template language for them to use. He had told them to file from the library to avoid IP tracking. He had coordinated the timing to create the appearance of an avalanche of complaints. The text messages included phrases that made his motivation clear. He had written to Bethany Merrick, "She does not deserve that department chair position. She is too liberal and pushes inappropriate agenda in her curriculum. If enough parents complain, the board will have no choice but to remove her." To Denise Hartwell, he had written, "Your daughter deserves a teacher who shares your values. Help me make sure Winters does not corrupt any more children with her secular progressive nonsense. The case went to trial 8 months after that morning when I stood in Kenneth's office. All 7 defendants eventually pleaded guilty rather than face a jury. Jeffrey received 18 months in prison plus 5 years probation, and he lost his teaching license permanently. The 6 parents received probation, community service, and were required to pay portions of the civil settlement. At the sentencing hearing, the judge was harsh. You weaponized a system designed to protect children for your own political and personal agendas. You manufactured a campaign of lies that destroyed an innocent teacher's reputation and career. Your actions have made it harder for real complaints about inappropriate content to be taken seriously, and you have damaged trust between schools and families. Bethany Merrick cried and apologized. I was angry about my son's grade, and Jeffrey convinced me Rachel was a bad influence. I made a terrible mistake. The judge was unmoved. Your anger does not justify conspiracy and fraud. You had legitimate channels to address your concerns. Instead, you chose to destroy someone's livelihood through coordinated lies. I returned to Riverside Middle School, but everything was different. Students who had heard the accusations treated me cautiously. Parents who had believed the complaints now offered embarrassed apologies, but the trust was broken. Some families requested their children be moved to other classes. Teachers who had distanced themselves during the investigation now tried to act as though nothing had happened. The faculty room conversations went quiet when I entered. I realized I could not stay. The environment was too poisoned, the memories too painful. I negotiated an exit agreement and took a position at a private school in a neighboring district where I could start fresh. David and I considered moving completely, but our lives were rooted in this community. We stayed, but I left Riverside behind. The trauma stayed with me long after changing schools. I developed anxiety about parent communications, second-guessing every email, every conference, worried that normal professional interactions might be twisted or weaponized. I went to therapy to process what had happened and learned that false accusations create a unique type of trauma. The helplessness of having truth disbelieved, the isolation of being presumed guilty despite evidence. My therapist helped me understand that I had been targeted not because of anything I had actually done wrong, but because I represented values and choices that others disagreed with, and they had found the most damaging weapon available to remove me. Accusations involving children are particularly effective for destruction, my therapist explained. They are emotional, they carry enormous social stigma, and school systems are designed to prioritize accusers over the accused to protect students. That makes false accusations appealing tools for people seeking revenge or pushing political agendas. 3 years after the false accusations, I was established at my new school, respected and successful. David and I had rebuilt our life, though the experience had changed us both. I had become more cautious, more guarded, less idealistic about education and community, but I had also become an advocate for reforming school complaint systems to prevent the kind of abuse I had experienced. I testified before the State Education Committee examining policies for investigating teacher misconduct. I explained how anonymous systems, while important for protecting legitimate complainants, could be weaponized by coordinated bad actors with political or personal agendas. We need to protect students and families who report real problems while also protecting innocent teachers from coordinated fraud, I told the committee. Current systems often fail at both. They allow false accusations to proceed without verification, and they make it nearly impossible for accused teachers to defend themselves until after their reputations are destroyed. Some parent advocacy groups criticized my testimony, saying it would discourage families from reporting real problems. But teacher unions and civil liberties organizations supported the reforms I proposed. Better verification processes, requirement for investigation teams to review physical evidence before administrative action, consequences for those who file false reports, protection for accused teachers during investigations. The issue was more complex than public discourse acknowledged. Most complaints about inappropriate teacher conduct were legitimate and described real concerns that needed to be addressed. But a small percentage were false, filed with malicious intent, and those false complaints destroyed careers while making it harder for legitimate concerns to be taken seriously. We needed systems that could distinguish between real complaints and coordinated attacks. Jeffrey Larson was released from prison after serving 14 months. He had lost his teaching career, his professional reputation, and faced years of probation. The 6 parents had their own consequences. Bethany Merrick's marriage ended in divorce. Laura Stanton moved out of the district. Denise Hartwell became a pariah in the community. Some might say they got what they deserved. Others might argue the punishment was too harsh for actions born of anger and manipulation. I did not celebrate their suffering, but I did not forgive them either. What they had done had cost me my career at Riverside, my reputation in the community, my mental health for years, and nearly destroyed my marriage. The settlement money could not erase that damage. Sometimes I wondered what my life would be if that morning had never happened. If I had walked into my classroom and started teaching poetry as planned. If 11 fabricated complaints had not upended everything. Would I still be at Riverside? Would I be department chair? Would I still have the innocent belief that truth and documentation were sufficient defense against coordinated lies? Years later, I still kept copies of my lesson plans, my surveillance footage, my timeline evidence. Not because I expected another false accusation, but because the experience had taught me that innocence required proof, and proof required meticulous documentation. That morning, when Kenneth said 11 parents had filed complaints, I'd had no idea my life was about to be destroyed by coordinated lies. But I had fought back with evidence, and I had survived. That had to be enough. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.